Thank you so much, Rabbi Rapport. It's really special to be here. Shabbat Shalom. When I lived in Israel, we had this evening where we had to make a minyan, a Mariv minyan, so that someone in our community could say Kaddish. And I saw as people were coming in the room, my madrich looked around, and instead of counting people 1, 2, 3, 4, he muttered these Hebrew words to himself as his eyes darted around the room to the heads of Jewish adults standing. Hoshia et amecha, uvarech et nachatecha, urem v'nasem ad ha'olam. And I was like, what's happening here? I learned that it's a custom not to count Jews like you would any other object. It ensures basically using this verse from Psalm 28, which has 10 words. You chant it to ensure that you have a minyan, and if as you're counting you realize that the verse comes up short, you know you don't have a minyan. And so I asked my madrich, what is this custom? And he said, well, we don't count Jews like we count cows, because that would be bad. It's like humanizing us. And yet at the same time, I feel as a people, Jews are always counting. We count people for minyan, we count the days of the week that lead up to Shabbat, Yom Rishon, the first day, Sunday, Yom Sheni, the second day, and so on. And in the wake of the loss of someone we love, we count Shiva, Shloshim, Yartzeit. We count the 6 million who perished in the Holocaust. We count the dollars of tzedakah we give in multiples of 18, representing Chai, life. As a synagogue, we count and share the names of the beloved souls who died of AIDS. We count how long our staff and clergy have been a part of CBST. One of the first things people often told me when I joined CBST as a CRRI was how many years they've been a part of CBST. We take so much pride in how far we've come, how many years old we are, and how many people were in the room at the very beginning. This past year has also become a year of counting for the entire world. 13 and a half months in social distancing, 5 days since I had my second COVID shot, 103 days of this new administration. Each day, the news is filled with numbers. We count the numbers of new COVID cases, the number of growing dead. We count the number of people vaccinated. And as concerned citizens, we count how many degrees the earth warms each year, how many innocent lives are killed in mass shootings. We count the number of Black lives taken by police violence. Why do we count so much? Counting can be monotonous, but in this week's Parshat Emor, we learn that it is much more. We receive the commandment in this week's Parsha, among many others, to count. Leviticus 23:15 begins with the words, Usfartem lachem, you shall count for yourselves. We are commanded to count between the days of Passover and Shavuot, known as the Omer. The biblical commandment to count is very rooted in agricultural practices. Passover marked the beginning of the barley harvest, and the first sheaf of barley, called the Omer, was offered in the temple on the second day of Pesach. The Torah commands the Jewish people to count 49 days, Sheva Shabbatot Timimot, 7 pure whole weeks, between the offering of the Omer until the holiday of Shavuot, when the 2 loaves of bread were offered in the temple, and when farmers began to bring their first fruits. Counting tells a story of the connection between the beginning of the harvest and the bringing of the first fruits. But beyond the harvest, what story are we telling when we count the Omer, and how are we telling the story? The verb lispor, to count in Hebrew, and the verb lesaper, to recount, share the same root, samech pei resh. But what's the connection between counting and recounting, numbers and stories? Numbers and data are, of course, really powerful tools for storytelling. We use numbers to make public policy decisions, how much money we can spend at the end of each month, and how to change our behavior regarding COVID risk. Numbers are concrete and convincing, but they cannot alone tell a story. Sometimes when I see the numbers flash across my screen, it's like totally impossible to integrate the magnitude of loss that I see. But still, we must always try to give respect to the stories behind these numbers, the people who've died, the grief that we are left to move through, and what impact they had on the world as individuals. For people to count, they cannot just be a number, or else their humanity is erased. We move in the journey of counting from a moment of liberation, freedom from Egypt, toward a moment of revelation, receiving the Torah at Sinai, which is the holiday of Shavuot. The Rambam, a medieval Spanish commentator, says that this counting between Passover and Shavuot is a way of recreating the anticipation the Jewish people had as they looked forward to receiving the Torah. To Rambam, the ultimate reason for leaving Egypt was so that we could receive the Torah. And one thing that's interesting about this counting between Passover and Shavuot is that even though we're counting down toward receiving the Torah, we count up in the number of days toward 49. Why do we do this? Tara Lindenbaum, who's a student at Maharat, which is a seminary that ordains Orthodox women, suggests that we count up from Passover to honor the not knowing that our ancestors went through in the wilderness after leaving Egypt. Bnei Israel didn't know when they would receive the Torah. They didn't know that their journey in the desert would continue, and therefore they could not possibly count toward anything, since the day was unknown and unimaginable. Just as we eat matzah during Passover to remember the affliction of the Jews who were enslaved, we count up to put ourselves in the shoes of the Israelites who had no idea what receiving the Torah would be like. They carried on, receiving this mysterious manna from heaven each morning. We honor their disorientation not by counting how much we have left to go, but by how far we've come. Yesterday we counted 33 days of the Omer, Lag BaOmer. Of course, I'm thinking of the 45 souls who died yesterday in the stampede in Israel celebrating this holiday. I think of Rabbi Shragi Gestetner, a CRRI Chassid rabbi and musician who traveled to Israel from Montreal to attend the celebrations. He was the father of 6. When I think of that huge number, 45, I think of the families sitting at tables without their loved ones this Shabbat. We sit in this place more than halfway between liberation and redemption. We take a moment to celebrate how far we've come, knowing we still have 2 weeks left to count. I feel like this place between freedom and revelation is where we sit right now as a nation. We're moving toward freedom, toward gathering together, hugging and singing in big groups, but there's still so much unknown, still so much grief. The Torah being given with thunder and lightning at the top of Mount Sinai still seems so far. I'm praying and acting so that we can move toward safety, but I know there won't be a lightning and thunder moment like there was at Mount Sinai that will call the end to this pandemic. Instead, we count like the Israelites, wandering through the desert, having left Egypt but not knowing exactly when things will change or how long that process will take. In Bava Metzia, the Talmud teaches us that blessing is not found in something that has been weighed, nor in something that has been measured, nor in something that has been counted, only in something that is hidden from our eyes. May we strive to find meaning and joy amidst the anxiety of these uncertain moments, to see each day as full of the potential for revelation. May we strive to hear the stories behind the numbers, tap into the unknown and the fear that the Israelites held as they walked toward Sinai, and hold on to hope that the things that are hidden from our eyes can be a blessing. Shabbat Shalom.